Week 5. Can you believe it? It is week 5. I'm trying to make sure that I have captions on. I think they're on, but I don't know that they're on because I'm not seeing them. This is showing that they're on. If I click view full transcript over here, nothing's happening. So I don't know. Um, I don't know how to do that. I wonder if that's something that perhaps isn't turned on for me through the school. And it shows that it is. Everything's check marked. And caption color, translation color. Yeah, I don't know. We're just going to keep marching forward, right? We're just going to keep marching forward. I'm trying to turn it on, but allow closed captioning for this meeting. Oh, oh, it says yes. So ah, we'll hope that it's there. I'm sure it'll be entertaining if it is. All right. Week 5. This is all about writing tips and tricks. I'm excited. I went through this PowerPoint yesterday and spent quite a bit of time rearranging some things from what I was doing before with my handout, how to increase your word count, which up until this week had 6 suggestions in it. Now it's got 11. So different ways that we can increase our word count, things that you can do that are going to help you in multiple facets, not just increasing your word count. We're going to go through that today. I'm super excited about it. I'm also going to go over with you some of the major things that I come across in student papers when I'm grading. We'll address those things in this kind of a format so that with the intent that we can head some of those off so that those will no longer be a concern for us. So I don't have anything to the left or the right here that we need to be concerned about. So let's go ahead. We're going to share the screen. And here we are from beginning. All right. Writing tips and tricks. First thing I want to say here is don't tell me that you can't write and you don't like to read. And I say that for a very practical reason. And the practical reason is what you see in front of your face right now. Every one of us has a cell phone. Every one of us communicates through reading and writing. If we want something bad enough, we know how to communicate about it. So there's that, right? We live in this world today where if you want to have a cell phone, you have to be able to read and write. Now, that doesn't mean that you write well, doesn't mean you read great, but you do have those basic components. So that's a starting point. That's a jumping off place. So a lot of us need to like retrain our mindset to let's get that word can't out of our vocabulary and let's begin to focus on what can I do to help myself? How can I grow? Right. So moving forward from that, oh, did Steve Harvey do his little eye wink? There we go. Or his eyebrow. Yeah, there we go. We got to have that. So, and then another thing here is we are inundated with reading and writing on the internet. Most all of us are on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I have a Discord. I thought I would communicate with my children that way, but they're not so inclined to have mom in their Discord chat. Apparently, they talk about everything in there. So I'm not invited into that. Some of you are in Snapchat. Some of you are on TikTok. I use X. Some of you might be on X. I use X more for just reading the news. I don't communicate with people on there at all. But there are many different social media outlets for us, and we're all communicating. We all communicate. We have communication skills. We just need to tweak them. So I like to point that out, get that out of the way. Now let's talk about how to write better than we already do. What are some things that we can learn that will help us do better? Okay, so here is the how to increase your word count handout. All right, we're going to walk through it bit by bit by bit. The first element here is be descriptive. Utilize the rule of threes for any item that needs describing. If your reader must know how that chair looks or how this thing smells or what that bird looks like, describe it. Use the five senses to create a description, but give the items being described no more than 3 bits of description each. There's that at the top, the rule of threes. So with each item that you need to describe, use 3 bits of description. My breakfast is 3 types of Cheerios. It has nuts in it, almonds and pecans, and it has unexpected delights in raisins and chocolate chips. That's my description of my breakfast. Now, you might say that was more than 3 things, but it was Cheerios, nuts, and unexpected bits. 3 different types of Cheerios. My new favorite thing right now is the Cheerio oats. They're so good. And then I put almond slivers in here and pecan chunks. Oh my gosh. Good stuff. The 3 bits of description, that's all you need, and you don't want to go over that. If you go over that, then you're over describing. If you go under that, you're under describing. But your descriptions can be a long if you want them to be, just don't go more than 3 things. And you want to make sure that the descriptions that you're choosing to use come from the senses. See it, hear it, touch it, taste it, smell it. Which of those 3 are going to help your audience experience what it is that you need them to see in the best way? So you have to think about that. Imagine your reader as ignorant of what you know, because most often the reader is, in fact, ignorant of what you already know. And we get into trouble here with writing because we make a lot of assumptions. And we're in a hurry. You don't want to take the time to write it fully out. And so because of that, go back. Because of that, we aren't getting the descriptions that we need, or I'm not getting the descriptions that I need when I'm grading essays. Understand that you know things I don't know. And so when you're writing, you need to be descriptive. If you're talking about a chair, I can't know what that chair looks like unless you tell me. If you're talking about a particular hat, I can't know what that hat looks like unless you tell me. I'm going to be imagining one of the hats here in my room, right? I have lots of hats. I really do. I have lots of hats. I have a whole basket full of beanies, and they all look different. So if you were going to say, go grab that beanie out of your basket, I'd be like, which one? Is it the really thick and fuzzy brown one, or the really thick and fuzzy dark brown one, or the thin brown one with the sparkly glitter on it? Or is it the white one that's thick that has a, a brim? Or is it the blue one that's really soft? Is it the one that I handmade that's crocheted? It has the silver flecks in it. Which one? We need to be specific when we're describing something so that our reader knows exactly what it is that we're saying, that they can visualize it. Now, if you over describe it, then you give them too much information and you're not inviting their imagination in to do some of the work. So we give it 3 bits of description. Here, you can see that. There's 3. My little meaty fingers. You give it 3 bits of description and they fill in the rest with their imagination. You invite them in. If you give them way too much information, there's no room for the imagination to work. that's going to produce a board reader, and we don't want to do that. So just the right amount is what we're going for. Never assume that your reader knows what you're seeing in your own mind. They don't. They can't read your mind. They have no idea what it is that you're talking about. For instance, I have a lamp that sits directly behind my laptop screen. It's kind of shining down on you. That might be why I'm kind of like bright right here, is because there's a lamp right there. If I were to turn it off, then I go a little darker. So if I just tell you there's a lamp there, everybody's going to see a different lamp because you all have different kinds of lamps. Mine has a vintage look to it. It's about 2 feet tall. It has a beige lampshade. I'm going to give you those 3 bits. That can at least point you in the right direction to see what my lamp looks like. Okay? It's on a table behind my desk. So, just a little bit of description. And it adds to your word count, which is a win. It's always a win. Now, the next slide here, which now it doesn't want to go to, it did earlier, is my how strong is your senses and your adjective game? If I say to you, be descriptive, do you immediately have a panic attack? I don't have words to do that. Well, I know you go to that place because I've taught this many times. And students tend to go, oh no, I'm not descriptive. I'm not creative. You're a lot more creative than you think you are. You're a lot more descriptive than you think you are. And I'm going to prove it to you. Now, years ago, this used to be an assignment in my class. It was an assignment when I was in my master's program. I'll never forget when this was first given to us. And each column had 20 blanks. We had to come up with 100 words. And I was like, what? Oh my God, I don't want to do this. But once I got started, it was easy. And when I was teaching at Vatterott and we had the 4.5 hour long classes, I had to take up time, more time than I have now with classes. So I guess in the long run, it's really not a time difference. It's what I choose to fill the time with. And so I find talking about this to be a little bit more beneficial than, but maybe it is more, I don't know. But regardless, we're just going to trudge through. I'm going to explain it to you. So I like to say, fill in each column with adjectives. And you have to have 20 for see, 20 for hear, 20 for touch, 20 for taste, and 20 for smell. And everybody goes, oh, right? What if I say, think about your favorite pizza, describe it? Does that help? Describe what you see. Stringy cheese, round pepperoni, right? You see just, you see greasy, greasy's just right. You see crisp. I love it when the edges of the pepperonis are crisp. Oof, oof. Crispy pepperoni, stringy cheese, greasy pieces. The crust looks just right. So how would we describe that? Perfect crust. So those all go under C. What about here? What do you hear when a pizza comes out of the oven? Do you hear sizzling, bubbling? Those might be the kind of things that you hear. You might hear a screaming because someone burned themselves. What do you touch? Well, again, greasy could fit here. Um, you want it to be stiff, right? You don't want it to be floppy. Both of those are good. Touch, adjectives. Taste, how does it taste? Delicious, perfect, cheesy, incredible. spicy, saucy, any of those words that fit there that are adjective based, put them in the column. And then how about smell? What do you smell? Italian. It's an Italian smell. It's a favorite smell. It's a warm smell. It's a comforting smell. Oh, pizza. Mm. Now, let's say your baby sat on your head and the diaper needed to be changed. I've had this happen before. What do you smell? Disgusting, pungent, revolting. You're going to come up with some words real quick. Do you taste anything? Sometimes something smells so bad that it gets into your mouth and you can taste it. What goes there in that column? Touch, squishy. It's a squishy feeling right against your head. Oh, oh, maybe some of it leaks out. It's wet. Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm sorry, not sorry. When you're here, the baby is having a good time. Maybe the baby is squealing, laughing. That baby doesn't realize the predicament you're in. What do you see? Grouping, yellow, green. Colors are adjectives, by the way. So you have a lot more words at your disposal than you think you do. Think of different things that you could describe. I could describe a green permanent marker. Well, it's green, right? It's cylindrical. It is stinky. It is permanent. It is colorful, right? Lots of different words to describe. I could grab all the rest of them and describe all of these colors if I so chose. But we have descriptive words. We just need to let them out. All right. So let's look at this picture. Now, if we were in the classroom together, I would have you toss out 5 senses words to me. What do you see? Just using adjectives. What do you hear? Clinking of glasses, conversation, dull roar, laughter. Well, I mean, we're using some nouns too, but laughing, um, perhaps some flirting. Do you hear people off the river in the background shouting? We smell. Of course, I like to remind you this is in the late 1800s in France. So the smells would have been much different then than we're used to today, because today we have things like deodorant. I see this scene and I think, oh, it's hot. There's BO. But maybe that's not what you smell. Maybe you smell the grapes and the wine, maybe the dog. You hear the dog yapping. Um, yeah, what do you experience when you look at this picture? Now, this is actually called the Luncheon of the Boating Party, and this is someone has taken it and done like a digital reproduction of it. This is the actual painting itself is much more impressionistic. This is by Pierre Auguste Renoir. It's my favorite painting. It's my absolute favorite painting. When I was in the 4th or the 5th grade, our class took a field trip from McAllister up here to Tulsa, and we went to the Philbrook, and this painting was there. Huge, massive. I remember it. It was so big. And I stood in front of it just going, wow. And I fell in love with this painting that day. And I have it now. It's in my PowerPoint. I have it actually right behind me. I don't know if you can see this. It's right there. That's a puzzle that I put together. And then I have it in my office at work. It's my favorite painting. I love it. There's so much going on there. And I, in my head, make up stories about what I see. And I've actually found a couple of books that I've read through the years where people had an obsession with this painting as well, and they wrote novels off of what they saw. Beautiful. Now let's look at this one. If you were the interviewee, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you taste? What do you touch? What do you smell? What do you sense? Can you describe this situation? Let's say that you're wanting to describe what this interview was like to somebody who wasn't there. What kind of things would you say? It's terrifying. This one dude was like grinning at me, and it was creepy as heck, right? There was one woman who never smiled the entire time. She was stone faced. One guy was giving me the side eye, like he didn't believe a word I was saying. It was very quiet, and they all had their hand clasped in front of them. It was like they were all told to do the same thing. It was creepy. Or what would you say about it? Right? How would you describe this situation to someone else? Do that. Be that descriptive in your essays. How would you describe this to a friend who didn't get to go to the Grand Canyon with you? Grand Canyon is one of my favorite places. I've been there 3 times in my life, and every time it has filled me with a sense of awe and wonder. I could never get tired of looking at it. It goes on and on. It's beautiful, and as the light goes across the sky, the canyon's look changes. The beauty shifts into different places, different parts light up. It's like it's stunning, breathtaking, awe-inspiring, deep, rugged, cruel, in a beautiful way. You know, people have died there. Civilizations have lived there, down in its depths. It's incredible, isn't it, that a river cut this out over millennia? Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And that the river still flows there at the base. Mm, beautiful. The Colorado River. Mm-mm-mm. How would you describe it? We need to be more descriptive. I found this chart. I thought it was fun. Instead of said, use called, cried, demanded, asked, stated, shouted, whispered, questioned, replied, exclaimed, except Stephen King says just to use said. But you have to make your own decision based on who your audience is. Instead of laughed, use snickered, giggled, roared, chuckled, chortled. He chortled at me. Crowed, cackled, howled, tittered, bellowed. Instead of ran, use hurried, raced, scurried, dashed, galloped, trotted, bolted, darted, sprinted, rushed. Using strong verbs is always more welcome in description than boring verbs. Always more welcome. Instead of walked, use trudged, strutted, marched, hiked, shuffled, sauntered, lumbered, paraded, ambled, strolled. Instead of saw, used glimpsed, noticed, observed, spotted, glanced at, eyed. He eyed me. Gazed at, spied, examined, watched. Instead of like, use love, admire, appreciate, adore, idolize, prefer, cherish, favor, enjoy, and treasure. And it goes on. I'm not going to read all of these, but this is a wonderful chart. Wonderful chart. I found this just doing a quick study of description and adjectives. I came across this and I thought, this is wonderful. I'm going to put this in the PowerPoint. So many words out there available to us. And yeah, you could use these to help you fill in that chart, but we're not actually going to fill in that chart. So awesome words. Knowledgeable. What a great word instead of smart. Knowledgeable. Sharp, brilliant, gifted, intelligent, clever, bright, witty, wise, ingenious. Now, if we were in the classroom together, I would say, use your adjectives to sell me this house. I've never seen it, and you need to offload it, and you're the realtor. What would you say to get me to buy this sight unseen? Could you? Could you sell this to me sight unseen? Now, I took this picture, so I'm very aware of this house. It's either, I believe this is on St. Charles Rock Road heading into the city, the actual city limits of St. Louis. It's either on Rock Road or Page Boulevard. I believe it's on the Rock Road, St. Charles Rock Road. Many of the old houses, which at the turn of the 19th or the turn of the 20th century, so when we went into the 1900s and the State Fair was in 1904, this was a booming, bustling city, St. Louis was. And many big, beautiful homes that over time have become decrepit. So this particular structure, many years ago, around the turn of into 1900 and in the time of the World's Fair, as the city was, waiting for thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to descend upon it for the World's Fair. Yeah, very wealthy, very beautiful, amazing structures. That downtown St. Louis area, if you drive around and you look at these old homes, I can imagine what they once looked like. You see, it has 3 fireplaces in it. We see 3 chimneys, at least on this one side, probably on different levels of the home as well. And I can picture what this would have looked like in 1900, 1910. It would have been beautiful. They've made updates to it over the years, but it would have been an absolutely gorgeous structure when it was first built. So anyway, could you use adjectives and strong verbs to get me to at least be curious, to entertain looking at this house, considering its possibilities? Description matters. So our next thing here is include examples, stories, and statistics. To strengthen an idea, include stories because that's pathos. It can also be logos and ethos, all can be wrapped up in there, but we definitely want to use stories in a pathos manner. We want to hook our listener. We want to pull them in to what our main point is. Statistics are extremely logos based. And so the more data you can use, the better for your argument. Use examples of why what you're saying is important. Be thorough in telling stories, leave nothing out. Like a politician, like a preacher, like a salesman, like a lawyer, like a professor. For each point, have a story. Now, this next slide, I've got to, while I'm talking about this, I need to get the share computer sound going. This, I'm going to share an example with you, is an example of a poignant song. Now, what does poignant mean? If we're in the classroom, I would have someone look this up. This is a song that's intent is to stir thought. It is to stir emotion. Now, poignant tends to mean like a sad reflection. But this is a song that's intended to stir emotion. And so if I'm giving you an example of what I believe is a poignant song, this is what came to mind. So I'm going to play it for you.
A man walks out of his apartment. It is raining, he's got no umbrella. He starts running beneath the awnings, trying to save his suit. Trying to save his suit. Trying to dry, but no good. When he gets to the crowded subway platform, he takes off both of his shoes. He steps right into somebody's fat loogie, and everyone who sees him says ew. Everyone who sees him says ew. But he doesn't care, cause last night he got a visit from the ghost of corporate future. The ghost said take off both your shoes, whatever chances you get, especially when they're wet. He also said, imagine you go away on a business trip one day, and when you come back home, your children have grown and you never made your wife moan. Your children have grown and you never made your wife moan. And make you nervous. You think the world is ending, and everybody's features have somehow started blending. And everything is plastic, and everyone's sarcastic, and all your food is frozen and needs to be defrosted. You think the world was ending, you think the world was ending, you think the world was ending right now. You think the world was ending, you think the world was ending, you think the world was ending right now. Well, maybe you should just drink a lot less coffee and never ever watch the 10 o'clock news. Maybe you should kiss someone nice, or lick a rock, or both. Maybe you should cut your own hair, 'cause that can be so funny. It doesn't cost any money, and it always grows back. Hair grows even after you're dead. And people are just people. It shouldn't make you nervous. The world is everlasting. It's coming and it's going. If you don't toss your plastic, the streets won't be so plastic. And if you kiss somebody, then both of you'll get practice. The world is everlasting. Put dirt balls in your pocket. Put dirt balls in your pocket and take off both your shoes. 'Cause people are just people. People are just people. People are just people like you. People are just people. People are just people. People are just people like you. The world is everlasting. It's coming and it's going. The world is everlasting. It's coming and it's going. It's coming and it's going. Thank you.
I love that song. It's a reminder, right? The world's going to keep going. The world's just going to keep going with all of its ugh. Live in the moment. Cut your own hair, because that would be so funny. It grows back. She's saying live in the moment. So see, I think this is an example of a poignant song because it causes you to think. It causes reflection. And she's saying people are just people. Don't let them make you nervous. People are just people like you. Doesn't matter who they are, they're just like you. We all have the same kind of emotions and fears and anxieties and worries. We all just need to live in the moment. Take off your shoes. Who cares if you accidentally step in a loogie? Why? That'll wash off. Live in the moment. Good song. Very good song. Thank you, Regina Spektor, for writing such a song. Some of you probably have never heard that before. Now, here's an example. I'm going to share a couple of examples with you. The question is, should you use a dating app or not? Some of you are in that time period in your life where perhaps you're starting to think about this. Maybe some of you are older and you are doing this. Maybe some of you have never done this and don't intend to, and maybe I'm going to help you with that right now. But to use a dating app or not? Should we do this? Well, example for don't use a dating app. How about we start with that one? People don't always tell you the truth about who they are. So I'm going to tell you about one time what happened to me. So this happened to me, right? About 4 years and 2 months ago, 4 years and 3 months ago. So yeah, sometimes people lie about who they are on there. Absolutely do. And you start talking to them, you exchange numbers, you start texting outside. They tell you their name, but don't always give you the right name. And so because I'm me and I'm who I am, and I did the dating app thing for more than a year, and that was like, 3 or 4. My best friend taught me to start looking them up on these sites called OSCN and OCDR. These are Oklahoma court record sites, and you can look up anyone who lives in Oklahoma on these sites. And what it gives you is all their court records. Some of you just went, what? Yes, absolutely. OSCN.net and OCDR. I think there's a 1 actually in it. I don't have my phone next to me, but yeah, great resource. Look these people up on there. So this one particular fellow, I was looking him up and he wasn't pulling up. So I did some other internet research. Because you know on Google you can like search a picture and it'll pull up information. So I figured out that he had given me a wrong name. And then I went to OCDR and looked him up again and discovered that this man did 15 years in prison for murder. So people don't always tell you the truth on a dating app, and you have to be really careful. My husband, before he met me, was also using a dating app for a very short period of time, and he was having a very frustrating experience with it because he kept running into married women who were unhappy in their marriages, who had gotten on a dating app so they could talk to other men. And he's like counseling these women to get back to their husbands, right? Like he was just like, this is ridiculous. And so on January the 3rd, he decided he was going to delete it. He was up really early to get ready for work. He was going to delete his account. And so it was like 3:50, 3:55 in the morning. And he's starting to delete things off of his app and then he's going to close it out. At that same time, far across Tulsa, actually, he was in Chandler at the time, but far across the state, I was awake and I'm scrolling. And I come across this man with the most amazing eyes I'd ever seen, who was sitting across the state deleting his account. And I messaged him, and he got my message because he hadn't finished deleting his account. And he got my message and he responded. And we started talking, and we've never stopped talking. Had it been just 2 minutes later, we would have not met. Is that wild? That's perfectly wild. So I did meet the love of my life through using a dating app. However, the point here is, and why I would use these as examples, is you have to be so very careful because there are many people who are not honest. And I have the stories to back that up. So I have more than this one. That's just the worst one. The worst and the best. So there's good and there's bad. You have to make that choice, but you also need to be smart. So in a sense here, I'm just offering out some really great advice. OCDR, OSCN, use them. Look people up. Find out what they've been up to. Look yourself up. Some of you are way too young to have anything pop up. Don't keep in mind as you go about living your life that things that you do, if you get in trouble, they're going to be public record. Do you want that? Okay, so let's behave, right? Let's behave. Moving on. That was the use examples to increase your word count talk. Now we're going to talk about using signal phrases for quotes and paraphrases. Random quotes carry little to no weight in strengthening your argument. If you explain who said what's coming and why their word is important, all of a sudden the quote carries weight to your argument. So important. You're going to include a quote in your paper. Tell me why. Or tell your reader why. Why is what this person had to say important? Otherwise, I don't care. I'm not going to care. You're just going to pop a random quote in there and I'm going to come to it and go, well, where did this come from? I don't know why this is important. I don't care. But if you take some time prior to the quote or the paraphrase and tell me why you're quoting this information and why this person or this company or this newspaper or whatever is a credible source, then I'm going to pay more attention to what it is that you're including. This adds to your word count, but it also strengthens your argument. It adds to the weight of the power of the quote. And you want to be doing that for your work. Absolutely. So here's an example. Stephen King, author of many short stories, including The Man Who Loved Flowers, gave an example of repetition in that particular short story that is bone chilling. He wrote, and he swung the hammer, swung the hammer, swung the hammer, as he had done 5 other times. Now, notice that even though Stephen King is in the signal phrase, you still have a parenthetical citation at the end. MLA needs both. So do both. I have students all the time, if they use a setup or a signal phrase, they leave off the parenthetical citation. I will ding you every time. You cannot leave off the parenthetical citation. It must be there. So have your signal phrase. Stephen King, author of many short stories. I could put over 200, and that would be better because over 200 catches attention. So over 200 short stories, including The Man Who Loved Flowers. And I could put from 1969, gave an example of repetition in that particular short story that is bone chilling. Great word choice, bone chilling. You want to give your reader a little bit of a use that kind of wording, right? Choose a great word. Have a list of adjectives and choose a great word. Swung the hammer, swung the hammer, swung the hammer. Now, again, those of you who weren't in my Comp 1 class, you're like, what? What is that? Well, look up the short story and read it. I'm telling you, it's good. And those of you that were in my Comp 1 class, you're like, yeah, stop. You're welcome. Here's a great example that I drew from a Comp 2 paper last year. I came across this and I was like, this is brilliant. So I put it in here. The Writing Center at the St. Louis Community College. Check this part out. A reputable academic establishment serving over 30,000 students a year defines logos as. Boom. Excellent, brilliant signal phrase. The Writing Center at the St. Louis Community College. Very specific. A reputable academic establishment serving over 30,000 students a year. We're letting our reader know this is not a small school. This is a large school. And it's reputable. And it is, in fact. Two of my children have taken courses at St. Louis Community College. I have compadres that teach there. It's a spread out large system all over St. Louis. So when you go online and you're looking for definitions for logos, pathos, and ethos, invariably the St. Louis Community College definitions pop up first in your Google search, which is really interesting to me, but they do. And I actually recently made a handout off of their site because so many students are using it. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and make a handout from that and then make it readily accessible to students. So if I haven't already included that and you're hearing me say this and then you're looking for that resource and you're not seeing it, let me know because I did make it. So if I haven't uploaded it to your class, I need to know that. So anyway, this is an excellent use of a signal phrase. Here's another great example. This one was drawn from a Comp 1 paper. Editor Michael Woodson works as a content editor at Writer's Digest and has worked for multiple other literary magazines and publishers as an editor and writer. Woodson is particularly interested in literary fiction and has authored an article for Writer's Digest that explains literary fiction as can be any genre and should be for the masses because at the heart of every work of literary fiction is the human experience. Look at all of that information. They straight up added, I'm not going to count how many words that is, but that's a lot of words that they added to their word count in this signal phrase. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. And it tells your reader who Michael Woodson is. Now, there are other students that quoted Michael Woodson as well, but all they put is Michael Woodson says. And I'm like, I don't know who Michael Woodson is. Not a clue, which is why this one stood out to me because I had read a couple of others of those first. And then I got to this one and I went, oh, there he is. Editor Michael Woodson works as a content editor at Writer's Digest. Boom. There you go. And has worked for other literary magazines and publishers as an editor and a writer. Establish that credibility. Tell who this person is that you're about to quote. Lay that groundwork. Let your reader know why this quote is important. Good stuff. Another reason why you need a signal phrase, especially when you're working with a paraphrase, is it marks boundaries. Signal phrases mark boundaries between your words and the source's words. It is one of my pet peeves when I am grading a paper and I'm reading a paragraph and all of a sudden there's a parenthetical citation. Well, I don't know what paraphrase is. Why is this parenthetical citation here? You have given me no indication that there was paraphrased material, no setup, no signal phrase, no nothing. Why is there a parenthetical citation? Well, that's going to lose you points. Absolutely. You have to use that setup or that signal phrase to mark a boundary between where your words end and where the paraphrase begins. And so let's say if we go back to the one before, let's say we weren't going to directly quote Michael Woodson, but we were going to put his words into our own words. We would still want to do the editor Michael Woodson works as a content editor at Writer's Digest and has worked for multiple other literary magazines and publishers as an editor writer. Woodson is particularly interested in literary fiction and has authored an article for Writer's Digest that explains that literary fiction is for everyone because at the heart of it all is the human experience. That still needs signal phrase and parenthetical citation because I am paraphrasing his words. But I have to let the reader know where this information is coming from to mark that boundary between where am I writing this essay and where is someone else's words, or where are someone else's words beginning. So by marking boundaries, you also provide a smooth transition for the reader between your words and the source. So important. You also use it to emphasize the source, to call attention to the author or source being used. In most cases, such as literature review or the use of a well-known author, specific information about the source is important for the reader to know. Give adequate and specific details regarding the source. It adds to ethos, credibility. Don't ever get lazy on adding credibility. You need to build up that ethos. Absolutely. To avoid plagiarism, all source material must be cited, and signal phrases are one way to cite a source. However, additional citation formatting may be necessary depending on your citation style. So some of you may have learned APA, some of you may have learned Chicago. I don't know. Maybe that's what's stuck in your head and making you want to leave off the parenthetical citation. We're doing MLA. MLA needs both. In MLA format, signal phrases are used with in-text citations, with those parenthetical citations. Both are necessary for proper source citation. Please keep that in mind. So here is a signal phrase with a paraphrase, and I've put the paraphrase in bold print. Stephen King, a renowned author who has sold over 350 million copies of his 60-plus books, wrote a writing textbook or memoir called On Writing, published in 2000. This book is utilized in college classrooms across the United States in creative writing and composition courses. In this book, King addressed many aspects of writing, from vocabulary to grammar, stating that the basis of bad writing is fear. There you have it. That's not the actual quote. That's me paraphrasing the information in the book. Okay? So, there's the signal phrase. It's long, but it's informative. It lets a reader know who this person is that's going to tell you the basis of bad writing is fear. Why can he say that? Why can he get away with that? Why should I believe this quote or this information? Why should I believe this? Well, because it's coming from Stephen King. That's why. So we let our reader know. The next giant idea is include opposing perspectives in your argument. To create an effective argument, include opposing perspectives. This can double your word count. Double your word count. I'm not even kidding you. Straight up double your word count, if not more. This is a simple concept. It strengthens your argument as well. It builds credibility, ethos, when you, the writer, are willing to admit that there are other perspectives than just your own. Be fair if you want to be heard. Now let's think about that. Think about that when you're out in the big world and you encounter people who are so sure that they have the only right way and they are unwilling to hear anything else. Do you listen to those people, or do you in your head go, ugh? We go, ugh. That's what we do. We do. We go, ugh. So, same is true in our writing, and we have to understand that. We need to be fair. We need to include opposing perspectives. We need to be willing to say, this is the way I view it, but others view it this way. Here's what they believe. Here's where their belief comes from. Now, personally, I disagree with this because XYZ. Stating what the opposing perspectives is or are, and arguing that in the paper, combating it with your own research and opinion. Show that you understand the opposing perspective by the seriousness with which you treat the addition of that information into your essay. Let your own argument meet the opposing perspective at every point. This is exciting and makes you credible. Ethos, 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 ethos. Build credibility. Here's what the other side thinks. Here's what I think. Boom, boom, boom. Meet it at every point. Now, I found this great video from Khan Academy, and I want to share this with you. It's about 6 minutes long, drawn from their argument section, and it's about incorporating opposing views, and I think it's wonderful. So I'm going to play this for you.
Hello, readers. Let's argue. In writing, argument is a kind of fight, but I think it is unwise to think of it as a one-way conversation. The best arguments do not plunge forward heedlessly. They do not steamroll opposition. Rather, they seek out opposing arguments and incorporate them. Good readers pay attention to how authors acknowledge opposing viewpoints in an argument. Doing this makes it easier to decide how well thought out an argument is and determine whether the author is knowledgeable and thoughtful in their position. Now, I do not practice the martial art of Wing Chun, but that style of self-defense is famous for techniques that block and strike at the same time. Your opponent's fist comes in, you redirect it away from your body, and in that same motion, continue your momentum into its own immediate counterstrike. Acknowledging the existence of opposing viewpoints has two main applications, which are pretty different. First, maybe you're not on any side of the argument and you wish to straightforwardly describe the conflict, like a journalist reporting on a lawsuit. It's a journalist's responsibility to truthfully portray the full scope of information on a topic, bringing every piece of relevant and plausible information to bear. The author provides equal time to the disputants and tries not to provide their own opinion here. That could look like this. Miss Adeyemi contended that Mr. DuPont stole the cookies from her cookie jar, and that furthermore she had baked those cookies in the first place, thus strengthening her claim to the said cookies. Of the 24 cookies baked by Miss Adeyemi, she alleges that 10 of them were taken by Mr. DuPont. Mr. DuPont, however, contended that as he was the person who made the cookie jar for Miss Adeyemi in the ceramics class he took, he is entitled to the occasional cookie. He does not dispute the 10-cookie figure, adding only that they were delicious. Judge Huang, upon reviewing testimony from both parties, sided with Ms. Adeyemi, saying that you are not entitled to a cookie just for being a good friend one time, and that next time, Mr. DuPont should ask for permission. Now, looking at that situation, my personal opinion is that it is inappropriate to steal your friend's cookies, an opinion that any right-thinking person should share. But injecting opinion may not be appropriate in all cases. So okay, that's the first case, reporting on multiple sides of a dispute without getting involved yourself. Now, the second application for including opposing viewpoints in an argumentative piece of writing is that Wing Chun thing, the block as you strike technique. It makes your argument stronger if you anticipate possible objections to it, address them, and strike them down, all the while still making your argument in the first place. Let's take this example from the website. This piece is about the lost colony at Roanoke. A bunch of English settlers disappeared under uncertain circumstances for reasons still unknown. And the author's trying to make the case that although theories for the disappearance exist, the truth is still beyond our grasp. So in order to make that case, they address several different theories that attempt to explain the disappearance. Many people have tried to solve the mystery of the lost colony. Historians and archaeologists have searched for answers for hundreds of years. Some possible solutions are: A. Native people killed the colonists on Roanoke Island. B. The colonists were all killed on Roanoke Island by disease. C. Their town was washed away by a hurricane and the people drowned. Or D. They all left Roanoke Island and went to live in some other place. Now watch what the author does as they systematically go through each theory and address it. I've only excerpted the first two, so let's look at those first two. A. When John White got back to Roanoke Island in 1590, he did not find any bones or bodies or any signs of fighting. Bones last a long time. If native people had killed the colonists, there would probably have been some remains or other signs of violence. We can guess that the colonists were not killed on Roanoke Island. B. When the English first came to Virginia, they're using a 16th century spelling, they brought diseases with them, such as flu and smallpox, that were new to the native communities. They had no immunity against them, and many died very quickly. Letters written by the colonists tell us that the English remained healthy, and remember, no bones or bodies or graves were found. We can guess that the colonists did not all die of disease. So the author's saying that these events are unlikely, taking the theories seriously and then thinking them through to their conclusions, but demonstrating why they don't seem very likely explanations. Why do they think it's unlikely that native people killed those colonists? There aren't any remains or signs of combat. Why does it seem unlikely that they died of diseases? There are no graves or remains. The thesis is nobody knows why. Here are two counters to it, basically saying, here's why, and the author says, here's why these are unlikely to be true, which weakens those counter-arguments and strengthens the original. Block. Strike. My overall point is this. Don't ignore the potential counters to your argument. Incorporate them, analyze them, and redirect their energy into your own position. And when you read, notice if the author is acknowledging counters or ignoring them. If they ignore them, you should be suspicious.
Right.
Why are they ignoring them?
Right.
If you can answer that, then you can learn anything.
That's right.
David out.
Excellent video. If you can answer why they're leaving
Hello,
that information out, you win. Why are they not including an opposing perspective? Why are they leaving that out? Find out the answer to that question, then you could probably disregard their entire argument. Now, I love this. I actually heard about this first in a AA talk, but these are blind people who all encounter an elephant, and they're describing it. They all have a different perspective. Isn't this interesting? So let's take a look at here. The one near the front says it's a spear. The one who's just feeling the trunk says it's a snake. The one feeling the ear says it's a fan. The one feeling the trunk of the body, it's a wall. The one feeling the leg, it's a tree. And the one feeling the tail says it's a rope. When you only have one perspective, you don't have the whole story. Opposing perspectives are necessary for a whole picture. You want to have a strong argument, include opposing perspectives, and then draw your conclusion, combating the other perspectives as you go, explaining why you hold to yours, but give it a solid foundation. And this is true. This isn't just true in writing. This is true when you're talking to a spouse, a coworker, a parent, a sibling, a best friend, anyone. Opposing perspectives are necessary to establish credibility in an argument. Otherwise, you're just, I don't know about y'all, but I don't really listen when people are completely one-sided. That shuts me down as a listener. I don't value what you have to say because you're completely all about yourself and your own opinions. And those people tend to talk the most, don't they? They tend to talk the most, and they just my opinion, my opinion, my opinion, my opinion, my opinion, my. And you know what? Y'all let them. But that's not who I'm going to engage in conversation with. I'll be engaging in conversation with people who I can share ideas with, where we can actually learn, where we can grow, where we can have a back and forth exchange of ideas. I had a student last semester who just was argumentative, and he'd want to stay after class and try to push his ideas on me because I don't really share my beliefs in the classroom outside of what I'm teaching, right? My political beliefs, my religious beliefs. I don't necessarily ever talk about those. Occasionally, potentially, if they actually help with the meaning of what we're doing, then I will. But for the most part, I don't. And so he liked to stay after class. He told me one day, he says, I'm going to figure you out. I was like, all right, try. I almost dared him. But yeah, he would just push his perspectives on me. And sometimes I'd feel myself like rolling my eyes back in my head because I'm like, you aren't even willing that it's okay. If I do have a different perspective than you aren't even willing for that to be an option. I'm not going to engage in this conversation. Absolutely, 100% not going to do it. Completely shut down to the idea that there could be a different perspective than his own. So I didn't find value in engaging in all of those conversations. There were a couple that I did, and I was able to get him to think. I was able to get him to kind of back off a little bit. But opposing perspectives are vitally important to your argument. And they increase your word count, can double, double your word count. Like, huge. Don't let your essay just be about yourself and what you think. Add some weight to it. The next one here is define unfamiliar terms. You're going to have to get good with the idea that there are things that you know that other people just don't know. It's the truth. There are things that you know that I don't know. There are things that you know that people in this class don't know. It's just the way it goes. There's stuff that I know that y'all don't know. We all have knowledge of words that maybe others don't have. So often in our writing, we have information that our audience does not have. We understand concepts or tools, rules, and words of which our audience is ignorant. Ignorance is not a negative word. It simply means without information. When this is the case, and it will require you to look at your topic and your work from the audience's perspective, it adds definitions to your writing. Just like I did here in this paragraph with the word ignorance. In this case, it's okay to assume the need for definition. So let's look at this paragraph again, because I added a definition in here and you might not have noticed. We understand concepts or tools, rules, and words of which our audience is ignorant. Ignorance is not a negative word. It simply means without information. When this is the case, and it will require you to look at your topic and your work from the audience's perspective, it adds definition to your writing. Isn't that great? Ignorance is not a negative word. It simply means without information. You can toss a definition in, and people might not even notice it. It just becomes natural. You say the word, and then you give it a definition, and then you keep moving on. It's brilliant. And it adds to your word count, and it strengthens your argument. You can't just go along assuming that everyone knows what that word means. Now, how do I know if there are words in my paper that people don't know what they mean? Ask a reader. Ask someone that you trust to go through it and help you find the words that probably need definition. You also need to be self-aware enough to know that you don't necessarily speak like everyone else. Maybe you use a lot of big words and you realize that not everyone else does. Okay. I realize that I have a fairly extensive vocabulary. Vocabulary is one of my favorite things. Scrabble is my favorite game. Most people don't want to play Scrabble with me. When I was in college, I would play Scrabble with our Greek professor. I never would win, but he challenged me and I learned from him. And I appreciated that uh, those situations because I like to learn and I like to be challenged. I also love to win, but I like to have to work for it as well. If I win without having to work for it, that's not fun for me. And so on a couple of occasions, I think I did win. And those were like, go have a party, celebrate kind of scenarios. But getting off course here, I do have an extensive vocabulary. And so I have to understand my vocabulary probably needs to alter when I'm talking in classrooms. And when I'm writing, if I'm writing fiction, I go ahead and I use my vocabulary. I let it out, I let it roll. I can go back through in the rough draft and when I'm editing, and I can add some definitions, or I can make some changes or adjustments, or I can leave those big words in. I can do whatever I want in fiction. When I'm writing nonfiction, I have to be aware of who my audience is. Do I want to use these words or do I not want to use these words? Because not everyone's going to understand what they mean. There are some words that just naturally come to me that I have to go, oh, I probably ought to find a different word for that. And so we need to be aware of unfamiliar terms. And it's a great idea. Keep them in there, but give them a definition because you're adding to your argument and you're adding to your word count. So, and you're teaching new words, which is fun, right? Learning new words is fun. I hope you think it's fun because we're about to do that. Let's cottywomple. A couple of years ago, I found this word and I shared it with Professor Michelle Yarbrough McGee. And I got us both t-shirts that said cottywomple on it. And it was that she decided to make it her word of the year, and she did. She spent her whole year cottywomppling. No, this was 4 years ago. It was 4 years ago that we cottywompled. Um, she literally did. Like she took off. And you guys are like, what does this mean? Well, here's what cottywomple means: to travel in a purposeful manner toward a vague destination. To just like put your stuff in your car and get in and just drive. You don't know where you're going, but where are you going to end up? Have an adventure. You're going on purpose, but you don't know where you're headed. That is to cottywomple. Isn't that fantastic? I love it. I love that idea. You don't already have a hotel reserved. You're just going to drive until you stop and find something. Ah, love it. Now here's some more. I love unfamiliar words. So I'm going to teach you a few. I'm going to give you definitions. How's that sound? A Nelly pot. Anybody in this room a Nelly pot? I am not a Nelly pot. Not at all. I'm just not. I don't walk barefoot much at home at all, like maybe from the bed to the bathroom. That's about it. The rest of the time I've got on shoes. Like right now, I'm sitting here in my office at my desk, straight up have on boots. I don't like to walk barefoot because I don't want to step in water or something wet on the floor. I think that might have something to do with having raised 6 children. There was always something wet or gross on the floor. I think I just established a habit that I don't like to walk barefoot. I just don't. How about the word pernicious? Anyone know what the word pernicious means? That's a wonderful word, isn't it? Pernicious. Do you think it has a positive tone or a negative tone? It actually is not as fun of a word as it sounds. It means having a harmful effect, especially in a gradual or subtle way. Having a harmful effect. So for something to be pernicious means that it's going to hurt. It will harm you. So we don't want something pernicious coming around. But isn't it a wonderful word? I think it's a wonderful word. How about mellifluous? Mellifluous. I like that word. What might mellifluous mean? Well, it means of a voice or words, sweet or musical, pleasant to hear. So someone's voice who's pleasant. A voice that you find enjoyable is mellifluous. Isn't that nice? It's such a nice word. It's a little awkward to say because you want to say maleficent. Mellifluous. I like it. Pearly Q. You've already got one. Everyone has one. Well, most everyone has one. There might be a handful of people that don't. Oh, handful. That's not a nice way to put that. I'm digging a hole and y'all don't even understand it. I'm just digging a hole by myself over here. I have to stop. So, a pearly Q. You have one. Everyone does. Most everyone. I'm doing it again. It is the distance between your forefinger and the thumb when extended. This is your pearly Q. Isn't that great? That's so great. Gambrinus. Gambrinus is an adjective. Gambrinus. What does that sound like it might be? Are you gambrinus? I hope not. I'm not. I'm definitely not gambrinus. I haven't been gambrinus in over 4 years. I'm not going to say that loud. You're welcome. It's a fun word. Now, here's my favorite word. This is my favorite word of all time. Love this word. I love this word so much that I put it into my book for love of words. Oh, this girl straight up calls her boyfriend a gynecolobomastophile. Greatest word. Do you want me to say that again? Gynecolobomastophile. Anybody thoughts? What does that mean? Too bad you can't share them with me. Hi, this is online. In the classroom, they will. It means one who likes to nibble on a woman's earlobe. That is what a gynecolobomastophile is. And I call my husband one. He's walking through the room right now. Oh, okay. So unfamiliar words, if you're going to use them, give them a definition. And you can give them a long definition, but it adds to your word count, strengthens your argument, and you can still use the words that you want to use. Sometimes the big word is just necessary, absolutely necessary. And so define it, keep it, teach new words. It's a great idea. We need to be wary of our pronoun usage. This is important. There are several different aspects of pronouns here that we need to talk about. The first one is this is very basic. There are instances where pronouns or pronoun usage can confuse a reader. For instance, if I said, Paul and John went to the store, he bought a soda. The obvious question is, who bought the soda? It's not clear. You may think this doesn't occur in your writing, but chances are, and I say this with kindness, it does happen in your writing. To correct the situation, some rewording of the sentences is necessary. For instance, Paul and John went to the store, he bought a soda is better written as, when Paul and John went to the store, Paul bought a soda. Now it's clear. Now we understand who bought the soda. This didn't add a difference-making number of words to the basic tenets of this small story, but the concept of clarity with pronouns is here. So when we are editing our work, we're going back through, we're reading it out loud. We're going to talk about that a little bit later today. Read it out loud. Your ears will hear mistakes that your eyes won't see. Your ears are going to say to you, wait a minute, who bought the soda? Listen to that voice and make that clear. Here's another example. Here's another fantastic example of unclear pronoun usage. To keep birds from eating seeds, soak them in blue food coloring. Soak who? The birds or the seeds? To better state this, say, to keep birds from eating seeds, soak the seeds in blue food coloring. So be clear in your description. This is not bad repetition, it's clarity. Again, this does not add a life-altering number of words. However, demonstrative pronouns are exceptionally capable of confusing readers. What are demonstrative pronouns? They are pronouns that specify a particular person or thing. They include such, that, these, this, and those. At times, our usage of these pronouns leaves the reader with questions and confusion. For example, before this evening, I must decide what food to bring and what to wear to my friend's birthday party. This is important to discuss. There are 24 words in those two sentences. While this statement might not be completely vague in its meaning, a reader might wonder which part of what food to bring and what to wear that this refers to. To clarify this statement, it could read, before this evening, I must decide what food to bring and what to wear to my friend's birthday party. What food to bring is important to discuss with her so I can bring what she likes. I've added some clarity. And I've added words. I'm at 36 words now. So I just added 12 words. That might not be, again, life-altering number, but it's 12. And it's more clear. So we have to be careful with our pronouns. Make sure that they're actually serving your message. If they're not serving your message, they're confusing your reader. They're drawing the reader out of the message and making the reader go, what are you referring to here? Right? I came across an instance the other day, and I wish that I had written it down and taken note of it. I was reading a paper, and the student, it was a fiction, and the student was writing, let's say Sally. Sally's the main character, and so Sally is baking some bread in the kitchen. Her mother comes into the room, and then it says, she said. And then the quote, I was like, well, it wouldn't make sense for her mother to have said that. But with the she coming right after her mother, it seemed like she should refer to the mother and not Sally. But reading it closer, I realized the quote had to have come from Sally, so that she was referencing Sally, but the mom is sandwiched in between the two, which throws it into confusion. And so, in order to not have confusion, instead of she said or says, it should say Sally says or said. Because otherwise, she, because it came directly after the mother, should be referring to the mother. But that's not what the author was intending. The author was intending for it to refer to Sally, but it doesn't. And so therefore, your reader gets pulled out and they're having to make sense of what you wrote. Like they're having to go, wait a minute. What is this saying? I don't understand what the message is here. And so we want to be careful with our pronoun usage. This is often I find replacing the demonstrative pronoun with the actual words it represents provides strong clarity and increases your word count. And the words, your word count went off the screen. I need to fix that. Taking a little further. In the realm of pronoun usage too, we must consider that in today's world, people choose their own pronouns at times. When writing these into stories and essays, we must be clear. I come across this in my novel writing class and in my Introduction to Creative Writing course. This is a very tricky situation. If a character is going to choose they, them pronouns, but soon a second character is introduced, and the pair of characters, the one known as he and the one known as they, are then referred to as they, them together, this can lose a reader. I hope you can understand that. It is best to be clear up front by stating that the character chooses they, them pronouns, and then work to only use those pronouns in reference to that particular character, and use fully fleshed out words, names, or descriptions, more words, to clarify when speaking of more than one character. Hope this explanation makes sense because in order to build strong arguments, we must be clear to our readers. Something to keep in mind is this. This is very important. Very, very, very important. This might even hurt your feelings. It does not matter how clear you think you are if the reader or the listener, the spouse, the friend, the boss, the coworker, etc., does not understand your meaning. Doesn't matter how clear you think you are. Well, it made sense to me. Doesn't matter. If it didn't make sense to them, does not matter. Because the whole point of a message is to get it across to the reader in a way that they understand it. So if they're not understanding, there's a disconnect. And that goes back to you. And so we have to then in the editing go back and edit and look at where our argument is falling apart for them. It could be as simple as your pronouns aren't clear. So the more words that you add, the clearer your message can become, and the more chance that you're having effective communication with listeners, spouses, friends, bosses, coworkers, readers, etc. Very important. The next one here, remove adverbs and replace with more words. This is new. Just this week, I've added this to the handout. I had to go back through and remove the old handout and add the new one onto everybody's course shell this semester, all 7 classes. But I'm not complaining about that. I did it because I want to. I want you to have this information. I want you to have everything that you need to have in order to be successful. So I know something that students struggle with is reaching our word count. And so if I can give you 11 tools that will help you increase your word count, I'm going to do that. So here's number 7. Remove adverbs, replace with more words. Instead of adverbs, use stronger verbs and adjectives. Make the scene or the necessary line visual. Make it showing, not telling. Make it visual again. Use the senses with strong verbs and interesting adjectives. Let's take a look at an example sentence. Why don't you come over here and sit by me? She asked flirtatiously. Now, flirtatiously is an adverb. It tells how she asked. Adverbs are modifying verbs. They tell how the verb happened. She asked flirtatiously. It's a horrid sentence. The adverb flirtatiously tells the reader how she asked the question, when instead it should show how she asked. Why don't you come over here and sit by me? She asked, batting her eyelashes. It may not be the greatest sentence ever written, but showing the character batting her eyelashes is a lot better than telling the reader she asked a question flirtatiously. Visual cues show readers what's happening. Adverbs tell them. I hope that makes sense to you. We want to use visual description, strong verbs, strong adjectives that show the reader that she's batting her eyelashes. We don't want to say flirtatiously. And we want to show what's happening whenever possible to make our writing more vivid and easier to visualize. Sometimes when you eliminate a single adverb, you must replace it with several words. It takes 3 words, batting her eyelashes, to replace 1 adverb, flirtatiously. But the sentence becomes clearer and more vivid. Now, this information is drawn from this link here at the bottom of the page, writingforward.com, writing tips, avoid adverbs. It contains a lot more information there about why we avoid adverbs. I found an article that I wanted to share with you. This one is called Bad Adverbs Are Easy to Identify and Fix in Writing, written by a fellow named Derek Haynes, and you can hover over here and be taken to his blog site. Here it is again, justpublishingadvice.com/writing hints. He says, yes, Using too many weak, poor, or bad adverbs can be a sign of lazy writing. Get mad at Derek, not me. But as a part of speech, adverbs have their place. You can't write without them. The problem arises when you use too many weak or poor adjectives that have better alternatives. When you can learn to identify these problem adverbs, you can delete or replace them without much effort. What are bad adverbs? If there is one adverb you should almost always remove, it is the word really, because it really is a poor choice in most cases. It usually says very little. If there is an even worse bad adverb, it must be actually. Actually. So really and actually are both adverbs we want to remove. Take them out. I would also say the word very often should be removed. I really don't like asparagus. Actually, I really don't like asparagus. Just say what you mean. I don't like asparagus. I'm not too fond of asparagus. I'm going to say I despise asparagus, especially, and here I'm going to use an example, so I'm going to add a lot of word count to the story or to this article. So there was this one time, my best friend and I, her name is Lana, I was staying with her. This was about 4.5 years ago. No, 5 years ago, because it was really, really cold and I was staying a weekend with her. And we went to the movie. Well, no, we first went to Chili's. That's where we went. We went to Chili's. It was like 30 degrees outside. It was so cold. And we went to Chili's. And I had chickens. I mean, it doesn't matter what we ate, but she had asparagus on her plate and she did not finish her asparagus and she wanted to keep it. So we put it in a styrofoam container and off we went to the movie. So we left the asparagus and the leftovers in the car, my car, and we went in to watch the movie. We went to see Knives Out, Daniel Craig. Stupid movie. The trailer had made it seem like it was going to be so good, and it was a stupid movie. So anyway, but it's one of those that Hollywood loves, and they give it all the awards and everything. But we're sitting there watching it going, and then it was over, and we went, really? And anyway, and I usually like an artistic type thing movie, like The Grand Budapest. Of that movie. Oh, anyway, moving on. We get back out the car. That is the worst thing I've ever smelled in my life. That asparagus somehow in the 2 hours we were in the movie theater, like rotted in my car. Cooked asparagus. It was the foulest smell I ever encountered. And so here we are. We're at the movie theater in McAllister, and we still need to go to Walmart. It's 30 degrees outside. We're stuck in this Toyota Corolla, dying, choking, can't breathe. But we're both laughing like hysterically, which makes it even harder to breathe. But it smells so bad. We both roll down our windows. It's 30 degrees. We got our heads hanging out the windows because we can't stand the smell. And neither one of us can just like throw it out the window because that would be wrong. So we're suffering. We make it to Walmart with our heads hanging out the window, dying laughing. It's hysterical. It's dark out. It's freezing cold. We get to Walmart and she's like, let's leave it in here. We'll take it to my dad. Okay, says I. We go into Walmart, we get what we need, and then we get back in the car, drive to her parents' house with the windows down, still laughing. We get that asparagus over to her parents' house, and her dad ate it. I've never, I've never smelled anything so raunchy in my life. So to see I'm not too fond of asparagus gives me the giggles because I hate asparagus. I'm gonna say what I mean. I despise asparagus. Except for VeggieTales and Junior Asparagus. I like him. See what I did there? I just added a whole lot of words to this point. You tell a story and it makes something mean more. So see, I just went back in time there to earlier in the PowerPoint and brought that point back into this point. When you see an adverb in the first few words of a sentence, it's often a good idea, a good candidate for you to reconsider. If you notice a sentence that starts with ideally, inadvertently, or honestly, you can usually delete the word, especially. Ooh, that word honestly. Let me give you guys a little secret. This is job skills related, and we'll probably address it a little further into the semester when we get to interview skills or somewhere along there. We're going to talk about this again. The word honestly is an indicator of lying. People who lie tend to use the word honestly. And so in conversation, they'll say, honestly, here's what happened. Why do you feel the need to say the word honestly? Because what that says is that you're not always honest. There's a thinker for you. And you can look that up online, read about that for yourself. You're going to find that in multiple places. It's psychology. Honestly, take it off. Don't use that word. If you're using that word in conversation, stop. I mean it when I say, I'm telling the truth. Honestly, ooh, don't say those things. Cut it. Unless you like people thinking you're a liar the rest of the time. I mean, maybe you do. I don't know. I don't know you. Maybe you do. So we move from that to here. Identifying overused and redundant adverbs. If there is a simple adverb rule, it is if you don't need it, delete it. It's abundantly clear that some words should be replaced or removed. Why don't we just say it's clear? It's clear that some words should be replaced or removed. And this is something that Grammarly is going to do for you. Grammarly, Editor, they're both going to suggest this deletion for you. Now, I use Grammarly Premium. I've told you that already. But when I'm writing emails, when I'm writing manuscripts, when I'm writing notes to students, when I'm putting together your course shells, anything that basically I'm doing on my computer and Grammarly's running in the background, when I write something like abundantly clear, it says remove abundantly. This is redundant. And I'll be like, oh, dang, you're right, Grammarly. Thank you. When you notice an adverb, especially one ending in ly, consider if it is necessary. Did you fully comply with all the rules? Well, we could just say, did you comply with the rules? Right? Did you comply with all the rules? So it's the same question because the question includes the word all. Now, what if it said, did you comply with the rules? Well, maybe then we could keep fully because we didn't say all. But if the question contains all, did you comply with all the rules? Then we don't need fully. If you comply with all the rules, fully is grammatically redundant in this question. But if you see to, it's a sure sign to delete or edit. I wholeheartedly and totally agree with your views on good writing. Wholeheartedly and totally. I agree with all your views on good writing. Use the word all. It's the same in this phrase. If you agree with all the views, it's a complete agreement. So the adverbs are unnecessary. When an adverb repeats what is already clear in the sentence, it's a great candidate for deletion. And you guys are like, wait, this is the opposite of adding to my word count. Well, you're right. But I remind you of what we talked about in the beginning there with the batting the eyelashes. You can add more visual description if you remove certain adverbs. What are good adverbs? Now, this is where I would say that you can even delete these and add more visual description. Time and frequency adverbs are often essential to the meaning of a sentence. It's rare that you would or could delete them. In most cases, these words are necessary and often impossible to replace or rewrite. I'm a baker, so I have to get up early to go to work. You could honestly say I'm a baker, so I get up before 5 o'clock every morning to make sure that I'm at work on time. Yeah, I can rewrite that and I can add more words. I don't have to say early. Sam rarely goes to the cinema because he thinks it's too expensive. Because he thinks it's too expensive, Sam does not go to the theater very often. Yeah, I can rewrite that too, and I can add words to it. Roy still drives his 1965 Volkswagen Beetle to work. Every day, Roy pulls up to this place of business in his 1965 Volkswagen Beetle that he's been driving for 25 years. Heck yeah, I can still rewrite that and use more words. Yep, it's okay. I'll finish that report later. It's okay. I'll finish that report after I get home from the meeting. After I get off of this phone call. After I clean up all of the dishes. Yeah, you can rewrite that and add more words. You can also use highly descriptive adverbs to strengthen your writing. With these, you can often describe something better and more concisely. And I bet I'm going to argue with these too. It was surprisingly easy to set up my new computer. It shocked me how easy it was to set up my computer. Used a stronger verb. Fixed it. I could add more words to that too. I could make that completely visual. I could tell a little story there. Like I could be like, all I had to do was plug it in. It started on its own. It started whirring, and I went, holy cow. I don't know why, but George found it incredibly difficult to learn how to drive. I don't know why, but George just did not seem to be able to learn how to drive. For some unknown reason to me, he found it very difficult. I just added a whole lot of words. I'm doing this on the spot here, off the cuff. Adverbs are not necessary. They tell, they don't show. And we want to show as often as possible. Showing is description, and it uses more words. It also makes your writing stronger. So think about strong verbs and adjectives. Okay. Let's see here. Yes, you could rewrite the 3 sentences above without the adverbs. I was surprised at how easy it was to set up my new computer. Yeah, and I was already doing that. But very often a sentence becomes longer and is not as clear. It can become better, though. It can become more clear. I will argue at that point as well. Using descriptive adverbs or modifiers is usually fine as long as you are selective. Yes, we want to be selective. The point is to ensure that the message gets across as clearly as possible. And I just use clearly, so that's an adverb. Sometimes they're important. Sometimes we need to be concise. Sometimes we need to use more words. Watch out for weeds in your garden. Stephen King referred to dandelions and weeds when talking about adverbs. His advice was regarding their use in dialogue tags. I insist that you use the adverb and dialogue attribution only in the rarest and most special of occasions, and not even then if you can avoid it. You should avoid using dialogue tags like these because they tell and don't show. He shouted angrily. She whispered quietly. He sneered menacingly. She moaned pitifully. In most cases, you can delete the adverb. However, if you want to retain the sentiment or action, rewrite it with more description. In a fit of rage, he shouted, "Get out of my life right now!" When it comes to bad or poor adverbs, those in dialogue tags are probably the worst offenders. Keep in mind Stephen King's advice. The best form of dialogue attribution is said, as in he said, she said, Bill said, Monica said. But let's look at those examples up there. He shouted angrily. He shouted implies anger. So angrily is redundant. She whispered quietly. Well, whispering is quiet, so that's redundant. He sneered menacingly. Well, that's sneering is menacing, so you don't need that. That's redundant. And she moaned pitifully. Well, moaning is most of the time pitiful, so I don't know. Just use more visual description. When adjectives can be adverbs, there is a small group of ly words that can be both adverbs and adjectives. When you use the adjective, it's always okay, but be aware of possible redundancy if you use one as an adverb. I am an only child. That's an adjective. Okay, that would be like saying I am one of two children. That's an adjective. I am one of three children. That's an adjective. I am the only child. Adjective. I only have one brother is an adverb. That's modifying or telling how many I have. Only have. You could say, I have one brother. And it works. She said she's been feeling poorly. She's been feeling how? Poorly. Okay, this could also be, so you know it's an adjective because you could say she's been poorly feeling. That doesn't sound right, right? It sounds terrible, but it's describing that feeling. The adverb would be this book was poorly written. I could say this book was not well written, right? And then just remove the adverb. Both forms are generally fine to use along with others like weekly, monthly, or yearly. Oh, go back. Summary. Nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs are one of the four main parts of speech and writing. They're each one. They are essential, so you need to use them all. In themselves, there are no bad ones, but you always need to be selective and choose adverbs that enhance and strengthen your writing. However, watch out for the unnecessary redundancy and take extra care with your dialogue tags. These two bad adverbs can really, these two uses can really weaken your writing. And he's kind of doing tongue-in-cheek sarcasm there with putting the word really in. You can see that dialogue tags, here is a link to an article called How to Write Dialogue in the Past and the Present. So there are, and here's another one. This one is to talking about biweekly and bimonthly. There are links to other articles from that Just Publishing site here throughout this article. Here's another one, adverbs and adjectives, so you can learn more about those. And then here down at the bottom, this is the Identify Bad Adverbs article that I've just read to you. Now, Mark Twain said this, and he did. He actually said this. Substitute damn every time you're inclined to write the word very. Your editor will delete it, and the writing will be just as it should be. I want to do that. That's real fun. Turn that in, see what happens. Sounds dangersome. All right. Famous Stephen King quote. This is from the book on Writing by Stephen King. I believe the road to hell is paved with adverbs, and I will shout it from the rooftops. He's going to shout it from the rooftops because he very much believes in description, in showing over telling. Tell very little, show most of the time. Use strong verbs and strong adjectives. The next bit here is use transitional phrases. Excuse me. Transition smoothly between ideas when appropriate phrases. Let me read that again because I read that incorrectly. Transition smoothly between ideas using appropriate phrases, improving the flow of your paper and contributing to increased word count. These transitional phrases act as a navigational tool for your readers, guiding them seamlessly through the various sections of your work. Consider these phrases as connective tissue. Binding different parts of your paper. When transitioning from one point to the next, employ phrases like furthermore, moreover, or in addition. This enhances the coherence of your writing and naturally extends your content. increases your word count. For instance, see, they just used one there, for instance. When shifting from discussing one aspect to another, use transitional phrases to create logical connection. By doing so, you address how to increase your paper's word count and ensure a more polished and reader-friendly presentation. However, avoid overusing these phrases, maintaining a balance that fosters a natural rhythm in your writing. By incorporating transitional phrases, you not only meet the word count requirements, but also elevate the overall readability of your paper. So as you're writing your essays, specifically in this class, when you're moving from one main point to another in your rough draft, use a transitional phrase. Close main point one out with a closing statement, and then use a transitional phrase to begin the next main point. Here are some transitional words and phrases for you. I found this off of EnglishStudyHere.com. I thought this was pretty cool. For those of you who are like, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what words to use. Well, here they are. You're welcome. You can also you just type in transitional words and transitional phrases on a Google image search. You're going to find chart after chart after chart that breaks them down into types of points or types of situations. And so you have the words broken down into different scenarios. And so it's easier to pick the ones that you need. But I like this chart. 100 of them. Ta-da! You're welcome. The next one is ditch contractions. This is a bit obvious, but we have grown so used to contractions that many use them even in the academic style. If you have any contracted words in your paper, restore them to their former glory. This will add a few words and will look more serious and style appropriate. The same goes for other forms of abbreviation. Spell everything out. Instead of POTUS, write the President of the United States of America. Instead of NBA, write National Basketball Association. Again, as with definitions, it might benefit a less familiar reader with the subject. So don't use contractions, write out the words. And when you have abbreviations, write out those words as well. This adds to clarity and formality of your academic writing. And it makes you sound more knowledgeable when you're not reverting to contractions in your writing and in your speech. Often keep that in mind. And the next one here is revisit your introductory paragraph. Sometimes an introduction is easiest to write after the paper has been written. Having already presented and thoroughly discussed the argument in the essay's body paragraphs, you have a more concrete understanding of the paper's direction. There might be some information or ideas that you can add to the intro to better set up the paper's points. So give yourself permission, give yourself the freedom to go back and rework that introduction after you've written the paper. That's wonderful. Look where this advice came from. 17 Magazine. How funny is that? Tricks that you try to make your school paper longer. How funny is that? I love it. I read through the article and I was like, this is great. This is so great. So go back to your introductory paragraph and add some things, rewrite it. You know now exactly where your paper is going, so you have a better idea what you need or what your audience needs. That's what you want to think about. What does your audience need in that introduction? And then our final point, and this is a very important point, have somebody proofread your paper. Get another pair of eyes to read your paper. This might reveal some areas that need work. Maybe you need to elaborate on a certain argument or include a quote to strengthen an example. So have someone that you trust read through your paper. They're going to be able to tell you, this needs more information, or I don't understand what this means, or this isn't clear. Any area like that, and tell them when they sit down to read it, I don't need you to look at grammar right now. I don't need you to look at, just tell me where the paper needs more information on a read through. Okay, tell me where maybe I've said too much or where I haven't said enough. Be specific on that read through with whoever you can trust to do that for you. You can even do that with the Writing Center. Let them know specifically that this is what you need from them. You say to them, I need to add to my word count. Can you read through this and help me see where I can add some information that will benefit not only the word length, but the strength of my paper? All of these how to increase your word count points are vital, not only to getting your word count, but to strengthening your argument. And that strengthening your word count is what this course, Comp 2 with Mrs. Cunningham, is all about. So that could have just said, and that is what this is all about. That would not have been clear enough. So, and that, strengthening your argument, is what this course, Comp 2 with Mrs. Cunningham, is all about. So here's our little recap. How do you increase your word count? Oh, go back to it. I'm trying to move this. Be descriptive. Include examples, stories, and statistics. Use a signal phrase for all quotes and paraphrases. Include opposing perspectives. Define unfamiliar terms. Be wary or leery of pronoun usage. Remove adverbs. Use transitional phrases. Ditch contractions. Revisit introduction paragraphs. And have someone proofread your paper. Hopefully that helps. I find it helpful. It's good for me. I go through it occasionally here, and obviously I do because I teach it, but it's a reminder for me as well. So the next section here, I'm going to show you some specific issues that I run into when I'm grading papers. So we're going to address those now in this forum under writing tips and tricks, because like I said, these are things that I comment on frequently when I am grading papers. And so let's try to avoid these things being commented on in your papers. How about that? This is also a handout on Blackboard. So let's talk thesis statement, which, by the way, needs to be one sentence. And that's probably the comment that I make the most often on a thesis statement, that people stretch these out to be 2 to 3 sentences because you just don't want to take the time to get it into one. One sentence. One sentence. We're not writing anything long enough to require a 2-sentence thesis statement. One will do it, which means you're probably going to need to do a little bit of work on it, little editing, but that's okay. You can do that. So be opinionated. Now remember, in the writing an argument worksheet, opinion plus because plus 3 main points. That's your thesis statement. Stick to that. Don't try to get fancy. Stick to that. Keep it one sentence. Comma splices. I see comma splices on the regular. On the regular and run on sentences. So we have to address that. And if you're using a grammar checker, it's going to catch these. Now, if you are running the free version of Grammarly, it might not catch them all. My suggestion is run that and Editor in Word, and maybe Pro Writing Aids free, and run several of the free ones because they're each going to be checking for different things. And so maybe you can get a well-rounded picture, or you can pay for the whole service through one of those things and have a well-constructed paper. So let's talk about this real quick though. A comma splice is a grammar error where 2 independent clauses connect with only a comma. Also, run-on sentences connect independent clauses with and no comma. Oh, the inhumanity. So it is incorrect to say, it is raining, comma, I walked the dog anyway. It is correct to say, it was raining, semicolon, I walked the dog anyway. It is also correct to say, it was raining, comma, but I walked the dog anyway. It is also correct to break it into 2 sentences. It was raining, period. I walked the dog anyway, period. So I'm not going to stick on that too much more at all. Oh, I love this one so much. Variety is the spice of writing. Vary the lengths of your paragraphs, vary the lengths of your sentences, and vary the lengths of your words. If you want to know a secret, your audience doesn't want to read a long paragraph. I am your audience in this class. I don't want to read long, chunky paragraphs. So my son sent me this a couple years ago, and I absolutely loved it. He came across it. He's like, Mom, I think you'll like this. So I want to read this to you. And I see that it is bleeding off the page, and I'm going to have to fix that. But I know what the words are that are bleeding off the page, so I can still read it effectively, but I'm going to have to fix that. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. Now listen. I vary the sentence length and I create music. Music. The writing sings. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use short sentences and I use sentences of medium length. And sometimes, when I am certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all the impetus of a crescendo, the roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals, sounds that say, listen to this. It is important. So write with a combination of short, medium, and long sentences. Create a sound that pleases the reader's ear. Don't just write words, write music. Isn't that beautiful? Vary the length of your words, vary the length of your sentences, vary the length of your paragraphs. Super important when it comes to catching the attention of your audience. The next one here is make sure that you're not using too much I. If you are writing in first person, too much I is a total turnoff to readers. I, right? We don't want to do that. And so a lot of times when you have included I in your rough draft, it can simply just be removed. You can take off I think most every time. It does not need to be there. Just start with the next word and let it roll. Okay? I think this PowerPoint might be longer than I expected. It can just be, this PowerPoint might be longer than I expected. Oops. But that's what we want to do. We want to be careful with how much we're starting sentences and using the word I, because I becomes boring to a reader. Tense agreement. Tense agreement's a big issue, right? Now, do I want to just read this here? I think I do. Yes, I do. Okay. So tense is an issue for me. When an author wrote a story over 40 years ago, it is illogical to say he uses, he writes, he is, because in fact he used, he wrote, he was, past tense. If an author is dead, let's use the euphemism, if an author is no longer living, then to say he or she writes, uses, explores anything current is creepy as fish and paranormal. He wrote, he used, he explored. If an author's work is making an impact, that is current, and therefore to say Kate Chopin's story, the story of an hour, makes an impact on readers to this day is a correct statement. It is illogical to say Kate Chopin writes a story that makes a big impact. Is she writing? Really? Right now? Is she? No, she's not. Kate Chopin is no longer living. On page 5, the tense switches from present to past. Please stay in the present tense throughout. Okay, so this is actually drawn from comments that I made on student papers. Like literally, I copy pasted all of my comments from student papers and put them into one big document. So that's why it says on page 5. That's referring to a student's actual essay. Please stay in the present tense throughout. It makes the writing much more interesting to be present with a ghost in the present tense. This piece needs to be all in present tense. There is consistency in tense agreement, and I'm about to mark all the present tense verbs that should be in past tense or the other way around. And I sometimes do take the time to do that, to mark all of the verbs that need to be switched. That can take some time for me to do, but when I feel like it needs to be pointed out, I will point that out. Be careful with active and passive voice. You want to use active voice as much as possible and avoid passive voice. Passive is timid. We do not want to be timid writers. Timid writers are like, oh, I want to talk to you about this, but I don't think you're going to like what I have to say, so I'm going to treat it kind of soft and gentle. We don't want to read that in our writing. We want to see active. We want to see opinionated. We want to see strong. So, with active voice, it tells us what a person or thing does. The subject performs the action on the verb. Subject plus verb plus object. Anna painted the house. The teacher always answers the students' questions. Ali posted the video online. Passive voice tells us what is done to someone or something. The subject is being acted upon. We have object plus verb plus subject. The house was painted by Anna. The students' questions are answered by the teacher. The video was posted online by Ali. A lot of times when you're editing, well, if you're using Grammarly Premium, it's going to point these out for you. But a lot of times when you're editing, you need to go in and look for these times where you've used linking verbs. So is something, was something, be, any be verb, any linking verb with a word that ends in ing or ed is going to be a passive situation most likely, and you'll need to change that to an active situation where you're actually having your subject do the work. Strong verbs. Make sure that your writing is your opinion. Do not ask questions in essays in my class. I don't want questions. This is not a science class. I'm asking you for opinions. I want to know what you think, and I want to see you back up your opinion. Keep in mind that haters are going to hate. You're never going to please everybody. And so say what you think. Fish them. State your opinion. Don't be timid. Bleed on the page. That's the next one. Now, we've talked about this as word vomit, right? Remember the baby throwing up. Let your words out. We also talked about this with the rule of Apple. Let your words out. Chuck Wendig is the one. He's an author that I talk about in Comp 1. He says bleed on the page. So it's just another way to say open yourself up, be vulnerable, let the words out, don't stop yourself, just write. So with him, he says cut yourself open, let your heart's blood bleed on the page. Care about your topic, and that's your responsibility. Just because your professor cares about the topic doesn't mean you are. It's your responsibility to care about it. And so you've got to find a way to care about your topic. Look it up, read some things about it. Find a way to make it human to yourself. Find some stories, find some examples. But that's on you. And so you can either choose to be aware of that and do something about it, or you can be not so caring about it. I almost use that four-letter word that starts with L. All right, make your writing human. Tell stories, talk about people, be honest, be vulnerable, be real, find the human aspect. We want to connect with our audience, make your writing human. Not going to camp on that too long. Harden the fish up, Care Bear. You're going to get critique, even if it's just from me, but we're going to also be doing peer review in this class. You are going to be getting critique. You need to get good with that, and you need to welcome it. Critique is essential to growth. That's just it. You're never enough when it comes to, is my writing strong enough? You need other people's eyes on your work. You need someone else who's willing to be honest with you to come along and say, this is strong, this needs help. And what's really great is to get more than one person to look at it, because then you get multiple eyes, multiple opinions, and you can then sift through and determine what you want to keep. And that's what peer review is for. So when we come to peer review, you need to harden the fish up, Care Bear, and get ready for it. It's good for you. I say this from experience. When I was first in my master's program, the first time I experienced peer review was horrifying. I wasn't prepared for it. Nobody taught me about it. Nobody told me what to expect. And all of a sudden, these people there's 13 people critiquing what I wrote out loud in front of me. And I'm sitting there going, what the heck? It was horrifying. And I went home crying. Like I was I was like brokenhearted. Like I was really upset because I thought my writing was good. And after listening to them, like they're pointing all these holes out in the story that I wrote. And I was like, oh. And I felt like quitting, you know, I felt like I can't do this. I'm a bad writer. I should never do this again. But I didn't quit because I had motivation for why I wanted to be in school. And so I stuck it out. Now, by the time I graduated, peer review became my favorite part of those classes, and I craved it. I longed for it. I looked forward to it. It's not something I have so much right now. I need to get back involved in a writing group, but I've taken some time to step back from that. But I understand the importance of it. And it didn't just help with my writing, it helped with my personality as well. It helped me as a person to be able to learn to take a punch basically verbally when it came to my work. And so that was a really healthy experience for me. The next one here is care less. And why I include this is I'm not telling you not to care about the process, but I'm telling you stop trying to be a perfectionist. Stop trying to be perfect, do your best, and do the next right thing. Please remember that perfect does not exist. If you don't believe me, you won't stop trying. Maybe you'll listen to a famous scientist who is quoted as having said, this is Stephen Hawking, he said, one of the basic rules of the universe is that nothing is perfect. Perfection simply doesn't exist. Without imperfection, neither you nor I would exist. Stop trying to be perfect. Flawed and fabulous. Because perfect doesn't exist and normal is boring. Heck yeah, normal is boring. I like being unique. You guys in the online class aren't getting to see some of the uniqueness that I bring to the classroom. I'm all about wear rhinestones and glitter and cowboy boots and hats and just whatever I felt like that morning is what I'm going to show up in. Sometimes the students go, okay, heck yeah, made me happy, so I'm going to wear it. Don't aim to be perfect, aim to improve. Now, here we go. I want you to read it out loud to yourself. You've got to read your work out loud to yourself. Again, you're going to hear things that your eyes don't see. Now, I want to share with you something amazing that I just encountered recently over the break. This lady here on the screen, her name is Nancy Erickson. I actually went to school with Nancy. Nancy and I took the same master's courses. She's an incredible lady. And she went on, after getting our degree, she went on to open Stonebrook Publishing, and which has now been in business for over 15 years. And she's incredible. She has, I think she says on here, over 100 nonfiction books have been published through her company now. These are read globally. She's internationally working with authors. Her career has taken off in unbelievable ways. She also, along with Stonebrook Publishing, has the Book Professor, where she will work one-on-one with people. She has a staff that works one-on-one with people as they begin to write their nonfiction work. And so there's a lot of really great information here about Nancy, who I call friend. She's a wonderful woman. Very happy to have her on my side. I will be working with her sometime in the next couple, 2 or 3 years to be writing my own memoir. We wanted to get it started a couple of years ago, but I decided to wait for some reasons that are personal. So, but anyway, she shared an idea. I was interviewing her recently for the author series that Professor Kyle Hayes and I are putting together for the TCC Library and the TCC Foundation. And I wanted to interview Nancy because she's a publisher. And who better to get some writing advice from than the woman who's going to determine whether or not you can get published, right? If you go to her company. So she shared some wonderful information with us and with the students who will be watching those videos. But I wanted to share this one particular idea with you because I went, oh my gosh, I love that. So over here on the right, it says, recently Professor Cunningham interviewed Nancy Erickson, and Nancy stated that when she sits down with an author in one stage of the revision process, she has the author read their work out loud to her. They both have a copy. They both read along as the author reads out loud. They are both listening. Brilliant. Find someone, don't just read your work out loud, find someone that you can read your work out loud to. I like to read my work out loud to my husband. He's an excellent listener and he likes to be very honest. Well, he is. He doesn't just like to be, he is a very honest individual because he wants me to be my best. And so recently I read to him something that I wrote, and we determined that it didn't need to get posted on the blog. It was just me working through my feelings and wasn't going to be beneficial for me to post it. I was fine with that. I trust him. I understand why he would feel that way. So it didn't get posted. There are other things that I write that I have him read, or I read to him. I generally do read to him, and he can help me pull it together in a way that I didn't see before it gets posted to the blog. So that's what Nancy's talking about here, but she does this in a very professional manner with the authors that she's working with, that they're going to publish. She has them read it out loud to her, so they're both listening to the words that are on the page. Your ears will hear mistakes that your eyes will not see. Brilliant idea. Find somebody that you can read your work out loud to, both of you be following along, so that all of those mistakes can get caught. So critique is what we need, and this goes along with that. Harden the fish up, Care Bear, so I probably ought to move this to that space. Every single one of us needs critique. Someone else's eyes will see issues that you do not see, period. The Writing Center is a great option for you. Please remember that. Remember, too, that we all see things differently. We just do. That's how life is. And if 9 would just be willing to walk around and look at it with 6, he would see from a different perspective. Same is true of 6. If he would be willing to step a few feet and to look from 9's perspective, he would see a completely different situation. Again, know your audience. That is key to everything. Know your audience. If you don't know your audience, you can't write a focused piece. You can't make a focused argument. Remember, we are all different. Expecting everyone to be just like you is at best naive and at worst irresponsible and self-centered. To argue well, to write well, you must know these tips and tricks to your core. Perhaps you feel a little bit like my son in the back seat. Just stay in the car. It will be fine. Good even. Yeah, just a little bit of an explanation on this picture here. He was being driven to the dentist. Screamed the whole way there. I get him there. I take him inside. The first lady says, "Well, hi," to him. Flipped personality. The charm came on. He had all those ladies laughing and giggling through the entire appointment. And I went, I'm keeping that picture forever that I took because that's my memory. Love it. So wait, I have one more awesome thing to share. I'm going to pause this for just a moment and then I will start back up so we can finish this here in a moment together. All right, I took my little quick break. It really wasn't a break for you guys, but I get that. One more thing to share, and everyone needs a pen and a pencil, or a pen or a pencil. I've got a pen and a piece of paper. So you can pause the video, go grab that. Get stuck here. There we go. All right, the very first thing is when I say go, I want you to write the word I'm going to give you. So I haven't said go yet. You'll write that word over and over until I say stop. The word is apple. Go. Write apple over and over until I say stop. All right, go ahead and stop. All right. So, how did that feel? What are your thoughts regarding that process? Now, if we were in the classroom together, I would be able to take this a little bit deeper. And I actually have a separate video of this. I probably should go ahead and upload that for you all. I haven't uploaded it into your course shell, but I should. I absolutely should, and maybe I will do that. I'm going to make myself a note. So it's a more thorough going through of this process right here that I'm briefly just throwing into the PowerPoint. It's a much more thorough going over of that. And so, but we're doing it now, but it has more explanation with it. So if you were able to write apple over and over and over without stopping until I said stop, you just did continuous writing. You were able to write even when you didn't feel like writing and to keep writing even when you got flustered because you had a particular word to write. Now, I would like to ask you in person, what kind of thoughts did you have while you were writing? And at that point, I'm going to go, haha, so you can think and write at the same time. Oh, you had thoughts while you wrote apple aimlessly. Interesting. There's a point to this. Let's try something else. So now write apple repeatedly, but every time you have a thought other than the word apple, write the thought out. If you get stuck, go back to writing apple until a new thought comes. All right? Go. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop you. It probably isn't long enough, but it's fine for the point that I'm making here. How did that feel? Just writing out every thought that comes into your head. And then when you get stuck, write the word apple. It's a great way to continue in writing, to use continuous writing as a technique. Now I'm going to give you a topic to write about and start writing. And if you get stuck, write apple until something new comes to mind regarding the prompt. Write until I say stop. So I'm going to flip the screen. There's going to be a picture there, and I want you to write about what you see. And when you come to a point where you are stuck, start writing apple until a new thought comes into your head. And then you keep writing until you get stuck again, and then you start writing apple again. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop you. I mean, you're welcome to pause the video and write longer, or this is just a practice that I learned from Dr. Douglas Price. He has been doing this research with Professor Amy Raines. And in my in-person classes, he comes and he talks with my students and walks them through this process. And it takes 45 minutes to an hour. because there's so much explanation that goes along with it, psychological explanation. And so I am going to go ahead and upload the additional video next to this lecture. That's going to be up to you whether you watch it or not. I know you got other things to work on, but it is highly beneficial. So my suggestion would be, it is a YouTube link. So my suggestion would be hold on to it, like mark it in your YouTube, keep it, email it to yourself, something so that you remember to watch it at a later time, because it will be very beneficial for you as far as learning this continuous writing, this word vomiting, this bleeding on the page, just getting the words out of yourself. All right. So moving on from there. All of this stuff that I have shared with you today works for me, but you do you, boo. I'm going to practice the let them theory, but also keep in mind I'm the one that grades your work. I'll let you to a degree, like let them, but I'm still gonna like hold you to task when it comes to the rubric and the editing checklists and whatnot. So anyway, we are a team. We are gonna do this together. Peer review is next week. We will have a brief video lecture at the beginning of the week where I will do some description of how to do peer review well. For my former Comp 1 students, this will be a review. For those of you who did not have me for Comp 1, you will find out my expectations for peer review with that short video. That one's only going to take 20 minutes, perhaps, and then we will jump into our peer review. Let's see here. Anything else I really need to talk about? We'll be starting Unit 2 in week 7. That's exciting. And your final draft of Essay 2 will be due at the beginning of week 7. But for now, your homework is the discussion thread on writing tips and tricks. It is to do your present with purpose, create and deliver effective presentations through Coursera, and your Coursera quiz. So hopefully this has been beneficial for you. I'm super excited to have brought you all this information. I think that how to increase your word count handout is phenomenal. I mean, I think it's okay for me to see that, even though I put it together. I think it's phenomenal. I wish somebody would have given that to me a long time ago, but they didn't, and that's all right. And I am who I am, and all is well. I figured it all out somehow on my own. Not on my own. I don't think I've told you guys this, but I think between my 3 degrees, I've had somewhere in the neighborhood of 95 credit hours in English courses in English courses over the years. 95. And I liked all of it. Enjoyed it all. So, does that sound like fun? Sounds like fun to me. All right. Well, that draws week 5 to an end. Thanks for sticking with me. I hope this was helpful. I know it's helpful information, but yeah, you do you, boo, right?